everybody! This video title might have caught some eyes, and for good reason. DenFur was a furry convention I used to look forward to after the last 2 years were so great. But this year? Now that AEIOU has fully taken the reins from the now defunct Corgi events, boy have things changed. And certainly not for the better. Allow me to explain. This video has taken long enough to make already, so let's just dive right into the nitty-gritty of the he said, she said, they said. Starting with AEIOU themselves. The weekend of DenFur was prematurely kicked off on Thursday night after the board, AEIOU, had a secret meeting where they unanimously decided to remove a person named Von Bon from the board. Now, who is Von Bon? Great question, because it turns out they were the only Denver area local on the executive team at the con. A person who was the HR chair for DenFur in 2022, and whose position on the board was encouraging to locals who had previously been hesitant to even attend DenFur. They had also been around for the handing off of DenFur from Corgi events to AEIOU, and was on staff for the current year's DenFur as both the hotel liaison and the chair of the event. And how do they repay him? By posting a disgusting letter to their website full of baseless accusations and then pinning it in the chat room for their convention. In this letter, the AEIOU convention board accuses Von Bon of many wrongdoings, including apparently renting hotel space and equipment on the convention's dime to host private parties. It really gives the impression that they had been planning to oust the seemingly one competent person among them for some time. AEIOU provided literally no evidence for all of these claims, and when I asked in the convention chat they had pinned it in if they had any receipts, since they claim in the letter they only do things once they have proper documentation, I was removed. Shocking, right? Seems like an organization with something to hide run by a bunch of spineless cowards, huh? But now for the part I know the most about. What exactly went down with me? Thanks for asking, as I know that's most likely why you're here. But here's the sitch. I submitted my 3 usual panels, which had all been historically approved at DenFur since 2021, and I even had my registration comped because I had volunteered and ran so many events in the previous year. So consider my shock when DenFur emailed me back that they had rejected all of my panels. What? So, as I am known to do, I sent them back a very direct email, which included the following. I don't keep my feelings on matters such as these to myself, as I try to articulate that maybe rejecting volunteers from previous years from running events or panels in the coming year is a bad long-term strategy for, like, you know, keeping people around, which they ultimately would not respond to. Very typical. Remember all this though, it will come up. Seeing as the convention was following up the previous weekend at Wild Prairie FurCon, the small little Winnipeg convention that made me guest of honor for the first time ever, I did take it somewhat in stride. Like, yeah, I don't have to do all of my events at every convention that I go to. I can spend the weekend resting, hanging out with friends. Better to be appreciated than beg for the time of day, you know? Skipping ahead, I arrived at the con and picked up my registration without any problems. Started mingling, running into people who hadn't seen me since who knows what con, and all around just having a good first day. I did notice the panels, though, were incredibly lacking. For example, in previous years, they had meet rooms which had hourly scheduled gatherings. Like, one day it was all species meets for an hour each, like canine meat, feline meat, rodent meat, whatever. Then the other day it was more interest-based, like a vor meet, a macro meet, and so on. These were time slots created by the con with no staff in the room to supervise or guide the people at the meet. We were just sitting awkwardly in a room waiting for something to happen or someone to step up and say something. When I went to the con-created transformation meet last year, we all sat in silence in the room for minutes before I got up and broke the ice and officially started the meet. So given that these general interest meetups require little to no effort from the con, I was extremely shocked to see that they had none of them this year. And the meets they did have were so incredibly specific that I could really have only gone to one of them. Already feeling weirdly disappointed and dejected, I began wandering the con space and distributing my business cards. But as I was revisiting some areas I had already put cards in, I was noticing that they were vanishing. Not one by one as you might expect, but all of them. Gone. With the other cards on the tables left undisturbed. Very odd. I decided to go up to a DenFur staff volunteer and ask if they knew what was up with that, and they did not know. They asked a second staffer who suggested that cards promoting stuff outside of con space weren't allowed, which my cards are promoting my music. You can still listen to my music on Spotify or whatever and still attend the convention. I'm not pulling people away from anything, so I said the theory was plausible, but the fact there were other musicians' cards untouched on the tables proved it untrue. I decided then to go up to convention operations, or con ops, and ask again. The first person I spoke to had no idea and didn't see anything wrong with my cards. They asked a second person, who took a photo of my card and put it in their volunteer staff chat to ask if there were problems. And again, nobody had a clue what was wrong with them. Puzzled, they decided to ask a board member who happened to be in con ops. And it was there I got my answer. Walking out of the back room like villains in a cartoon, first was Carbide, a member of the board and the head of con ops, accompanied by his lackey and fellow board member Neko Bunny, who was the panel scheduling person for the con. This Carbide fella is a big guy, probably at least in his late 30s, and he was definitely trying to intimidate me. He said right away that I specifically was not allowed to put cards in con space. Why? Well, it's because the email I had sent to Neko Bunny was perceived by Carbide as a threat against him, against Neko Bunny, against the entire organization. And I could hardly believe my ears. That me, sharing my lived experience as a volunteer and panelist at DenFur in years past, was now harmful to the event. If that doesn't indicate regime change, I don't know what does. It certainly seems like the board made me enemy number one after meeting in secret and keeping the rest of their volunteers completely in the dark regarding it, because it basically just amounted to petty drama that they didn't want on the record for anyone outside of their board club. Carbide went on to say that he had drafted a cease and desist and had talked to lawyers about my email, which I scoffed at as soon as he said that they had emailed me to warn me, but that the email had bounced back. I immediately called his bluff on that and said that I had already corresponded with the con before, so that kind of thing should not happen and was not an excuse, and that I am reachable in many other ways, but he did not care. He just continued monologuing, puffing his chest out and everything. He made a comment where he said, "I work in InfoSec, I know a threat when I see one." And I quickly responded with, "Well, I work in politics, and I know what I wrote, and you just see what you want to see." He shot back at me that he's also a former Marine, or whatever, and that they had taught him to read between the lines. Like, okay, buddy, you definitely don't sound like a guy who is power tripping out of his mind right now. He went on to say that business cards in general weren't allowed in con space, to which I pointed at the card stand they had set up in the Artists Alley lobby foyer part of the con space, to which he responded that it wasn't actually for cards, it was for stickers. Another shock for me and everyone else who had been putting cards in there for the day leading up to this. So I told him to his face after he said that, well, that doesn't read or come across at all, so maybe someone should fix that. He continued on, saying that I was only allowed to attend the con by his grace, since I had apparently violated the code of conduct, which, might I remind you, I already picked up my registration with no problems. He gave me half an hour to collect the business cards that I had already put down, and let me go on my way. He didn't take my badge or accuse me of anything in the con space at this point, so I was seemingly off the hook. But the moment he said, "by his grace," it was like a timer went up over my head. Like, uh-oh, how long am I allowed to be here? Turns out, not long. Later that night, around after 10 p.m., after the transformation panel run by their musical guest of honor had concluded, and I had of course attended, I walked back into the karaoke room, which happened to be next door, and with how long the queue was, I knew my song was next. But the karaoke host told me that the con was looking for me. They wanted to talk about my badge or something. I didn't have a clue what he was talking about, but literally a few minutes after that, a new con staffer, a board member I hadn't seen before, and a member of the hotel staff all came down to pull me out of the room. The board member accused me of approaching people in con hallways to solicit merch sales, which is a baseless accusation. The only CD that changed hands in con space was when the con's own musical guest of honor had sent me money on PayPal earlier to buy a copy. No cash changed hands in con space, and I certainly wasn't harassing people to make sales. I don't need to do that. It didn't make any sense, but the board said they had proof. Just as much proof as they have for Bon Bon, I'm sure. And took my badge. Thankfully, as a person used to being in confrontation situations, I handled myself well, and I spoke well, particularly to the hotel staffer they had brought down to make it official. I especially didn't want to make a scene because I didn't want to get trespassed from the event and be left without a hotel room to stay in. So I acknowledged my removal from the event and told the hotel staffer, this isn't the first time the board has made baseless accusations just to get rid of someone they don't like, just so you know. And I could see the expression on the board rep's face when I said that, and the hotel staffer nodded knowingly back at me. But that was my cue to leave before they demanded my room number, so I got the heck out of Dodge and just spent the weekend hiding in my room. And that was basically my entire DenFur. Didn't even last one day before the people in power got too threatened by me and my big mouth. For those who only saw DenFur through the eyes of furry social media or retellings from people who weren't there, the common criticism was that the Sheraton was cracking down hard. Room parties were being shut down left and right, attendees apparently being evicted from their rooms for seemingly no reason, and so on and so on. Now, I wonder if this sort of thing could have happened as a result of AEIOU firing one of their long-term staffers that had a lot of experience with the event and the convention hotel the day before the event started, and then hearing further testimony from myself being removed seemingly baselessly. Make no mistake, DenFur destroyed their relationship with their hotel, one abuse of power at a time, all on their own. I mean, it's definitely clear why the AEIOU people were so threatened by my presence. Very few people in this fandom conduct themselves like I do, with a desire for transparency and a penchant for bluntness. But for all the constant, careful what you say, conventions talk to each other nonsense you hear, it's important to remember that attendees can talk too, and they can speak up if a con is deteriorating, which DenFur definitely proved this year that unless they can deal with the idiots on their executive team, well, they're well on their way to closing their doors like Rocky Mountain FurCon did, the previous convention in Denver. When I had my badge removed, I asked the board member that was there to email me the accusation so I could have it in writing. He basically refused and said if I wanted a follow-up that I had to email the board. Even the hotel staffer visually showed on his face that he thought that was a weak sauce way to stand up for your own baseless accusation. But much like with IFC, I've decided to not bother with emailing. I mean, with how scared they were, I might make a video on them. Imagine how they feel now. Gonna send that international cease and desist? Ban me from all AEIOU events? For what, exactly? I mean, they can clearly do it for whatever reason they want, but does it matter? Do they matter? When attendees start telling each other about the terrible experiences they have had at your cons, who does that reflect on? Me or you? AEIOU, to be, specific. And that basically concludes this video and autopsy on DenFur 2023. Did you go? What was your con like? And if not, did anyone you know or follow go? Send them this video and leave a comment on your take on the whole situation and share your own experience. I'm seriously getting fed up with how much drama in this community seems to be created by the people in power at conventions that are unwilling to fix either their events or themselves. And I know that I will continue to be in the minority on these things in the furry fandom because a lot of furries just hate confrontation. But remember, there's strength in numbers and in our wallets. You don't have to go to every convention, especially when they behave this poorly, from their leadership to their panels. You can find friends at any event, and from now on, I'll be skipping DenFur and all AEIOU events. Unless they apologize. And no, I won't accept that the email bounced back. as an excuse. Again. That is it. Thank you for watching, and thank you to all my patrons who support me and know what an uphill battle it is to try and get the truth out in this community. I will hopefully see you in the next video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit like, share, all the things, you know, because the next video won't be so far away. Stay tuned. But for now, that's it for me, the internet's favorite furry civet. So, thank you for watching again, and bye! Hopefully more positive in the next one, but I don't know, probably not likely.